Good afternoon and welcome to Business Buzz. Coming up, the Nigerian exchange edges lower on Thursday as the all-share index slips despite a broadly positive market. The central bank launches a real-time tracking platform for the Bureau de Change operators and orders unused dollars back into the market within 24 hours. The Naira comes under fresh pressure after the Dangote refinery begins pricing local fuel sales in dollars, and oil production climbs to a 6-year high, strengthening the reserves now holding up the Naira. I'm Zeno Iroro. Stay with us. We begin with the markets, where the Nigerian exchange retreated on Thursday. The all-share index shed just over 221 points to close at 242,145. That's a slip of 0.9%. Also, market capitalization fell by 32.16 billion naira to 156.21 trillion naira. But beneath the headline, the market was broadly positive. 32 stocks advanced, 25 declined, and 89 closed unchanged. First Holdco led the gainers, rising almost 10% to 87 naira 25 kobo, followed by McNichols and UBA. On the losing side, Unisol paced the fallers, down 10% to 189 naira. A quiet session then, the index easing even as more stocks rose than fell. Now on the foreign exchange market, the Central Bank of Nigeria has launched the FX BDC Purchase Tracker and directed Bureau de Change operators to sell any unused foreign exchange purchased from the official market within 24 hours after the utilization period expires. This move is designed to curb speculation and stop operators warehousing dollars in anticipation of exchange rate movements. Violations could attract fines, suspension, or the withdrawal of licenses. With more than 1,700 licensed operators nationwide, the framework brings one of Africa's largest retail currency networks under far closer watch. Meanwhile, on the currency market, the Naira would weaken in the week ahead after the Dangote refinery began pricing local fuel sales in dollars, boosting demand for hard currency. The Naira was quoted at 1,383 to the dollar on the official market on Thursday, slightly weaker than the previous week, and changed hands at around 1,425 in the street trading. Traders say pressure may persist unless global risk appetite improves. Elsewhere on the continent, Ghana's cedi and Uganda's shilling are also expected to stay under pressure, while the Kenyan shilling and Zambian kwacha hold broadly steady. It's time now for a break. When we come back, who pays for the national grid when the biggest customers leave? Welcome back. Now to the heart of the program and Nigeria's electricity crisis. Two new reports tell one story. The regulator says transmission losses cost the power sector 2.61 billion naira in the first quarter, as nearly 8% of all electricity generated never reached the distribution companies. At the same time, the biggest customers are walking away. Universities accounted for more than 80% of self-generation permits approved in the same quarter, led by University of Port Harcourt and its teaching hospital. They joined steel mills, breweries, even the Federal Tax Authority in building their own power plants. To make sense of what this exodus means, we spoke with Sidon Adinuba, former Commissioner for Information in Anambra State and head of corporate communications at Geometric Power, the company behind ABBA Independent Power Project. We began with the cost of leaving. Building your own plants, he told us, depends on capacity, technology, and fuel, and it is never cheap. In fact, he says self-generation is far more expensive than the grid. Institutions do it anyway because they feel they have no choice.
It is enormous. Nobody can tell it categorically at this point. What's the actual amount? It depends on a couple of variables, including number one, the capacity of the power plant, the capital power. What is the capacity? 2 megawatts, 5, 10, 15, 20, etc. Number two, what kind of technology? They're going from German technology to be more expensive than Chinese or Indian. Of course, there is American technology. Then, are you going to use gas? Use the cheapest in Nigeria, or coal, or solar, or hydroelectricity, and so on and so forth. Of course, there is hydrogen, there is wind power. Well, the most popular in Nigeria are gas-fired, hydro, solar. Wind has been tried in Katsina State. Their success. So it all depends on a couple of variables.
Okay.
It's much cheaper to get your power from the public infrastructure, from discos. Then when this power from discos are not reliable, then we are compelled to self-generate, including using regular plants fired by diesel or petrol. Self-generation is exceedingly expensive. It causes noise pollution, and it is also depletes the ozone layer, harming our climate. So it's better to get from the public source. But when the public source is not reliable, then they are compelled to self-generate. That's the problem.
Perfect. But every big customer that leaves takes bills with it, so we put it to him directly. With universities, steel mills, and even a federal tax agency gone, who's left paying to keep the grid running? His answer began at the very top. Even the presidential villa, he notes, has turned to solar, a project whose cost has risen 70% to some 17 billion naira. A vote of no confidence, as he puts it, from the biggest office in the land.
As the public power supply is no longer reliable, they'll be getting worse with each passing day. And because of all that, people are compelled to self-generate. And they not just not be reliable. When it's available, there are a lot of problems. One, the voltage, sometimes excessive, damaging very sensitive parts of things. Sometimes resulting in infernos, in fires, people dying. There are a lot of instances of where ACs that were caught fire because of power surge, and people died, including prominent Nigerians. I remember, for example, the wife of the former military governor of Niger State. She died in such a fire arising from power surge. So these are the problems. And of course, let's not forget the immediate trigger for universities embarking on self-generation right now, or what's it called, all of them were placed on band A, meaning they should be receiving at least 20 hours of power supply every day. But then the tariff has gone up from 66 naira per megawatt hour, per kilowatt hour to 209. Many universities cannot afford the tariff. So they decided, let's have our own facility. We're not going to sell to the public. We generate and we consume. And every major university is a very big community. A lot of students, laboratories, workshops, cafeterias, dormitories, etc. So they require plenty of power. Don't forget that the presidency state house at Abuja left or is planning to leave. It built a 10 billion naira solar plant, even though the cost was increased by 70%, bringing the total amount to 17 billion. To some people, resorting to solar is a vote of no confidence in the public power facilities we have in Nigeria. If that would come from the president, the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and the office of the Vice President and their residences, who is left, birds, it may not result an increase in tariff for end users like you and me, not necessarily, because the tariff is regulated by the National Electricity Regulatory Commission and various states electricity regulatory commissions. And there are about 15 of them in Nigeria right now. So some of them are not yet fully functional. So you can't wake up and fix your tariff. No, it was approved by appropriate government agencies. Make a request. But don't forget, we don't even have enough. Even if we double the capacity of power generated in Nigeria, it means moving from 45,000 megawatts to 10,000 megawatts, it will still not be enough for a nation of some 200 million people.
There is also the cost of inefficiency itself. The transmission company missed its own loss target this quarter, a shortfall that could cost the sector over 2.5 billion naira in penalties, money the rules say cannot be recovered from customers. Mr. Adinuba calls transmission the sick baby of the electricity chain, government-owned, aging, and unable to carry even half of what Nigeria can generate.
TCN, the transmission company of Nigeria, then you have a market operator, you have a system operator, ISO, independent system operator. Let's talk about the TCN. It's government owned, very government owned. Who absorbs TCN, ISO? In the Nigerian electricity value chain, you have DISCOs, you have JPOs, both have been privatized, but not transmission. And you know the problem with government state-owned enterprises? Poor management, corruption, poor decision processes. Takes quite a long time to take a decision. You have to wait for the government and the bureaucracy and so on and so forth. But more importantly is that the infrastructure, the transmission infrastructure is very old, poorly maintained, fragile, and once it's loaded with more than 5,000 megawatts, it collapses automatically. So that is the sick baby of the Nigerian electricity chain. It is a big problem. So until it is modernized, until it becomes better managed, which may also mean not owned by the government, do not expect a drastic change. So when you have the other segments, distribution, generation, in the private hands, but not transmission, then you have a misalignment. So TCN, ISO, owned by the federal government, the generation companies, distribution companies owned by the private sector. Whereas Nigeria's installed generation capacity is between 13,000 and 15,000 megawatts. What is available because of the capacity of the transmission infrastructure is only between 4,000 and 5,000 megawatts. So even if we generate forth the way things are today, the state of the transmission infrastructure makes it extremely difficult for us to transmit more than 5,000 megawatts. So
Then there is the money owed from beyond Nigeria's borders. Nigeria is owed close to 17.5 billion naira by Benin, Togo, and Niger for electricity supplied this year. But Mr. Adinuba argues this is not the loss it appears to be. The supply, he says, is strategic. The River Niger, which feeds Nigeria's biggest hydroelectric dams, rises far beyond our borders. Cheap power for our neighbors is the price of keeping that river flowing.
I don't think it's a financial loss. No, I don't. They are owing. Why didn't they pay immediately? I don't know the answer. Fair. But the reports I read say, no, they pay for previous debts, not for the last quarter. That's they're not becoming. But the number question I hear from Nigerians regularly is, why are we supplying to 3 West African countries where we don't have enough? Doesn't charity start at home? Well, that's an innocent question. And I must say, patriotic, but it is not very informed. The question is, why are we supplying? It's not really a matter of charity. It has to do with our own strategic interests. Now, we have 4 major hydroelectricity power plants in the country, all of them located in the Niger State, for which reason Niger State is also named the power state, namely Chirero, Kainji, and Jeba, as well as Zungeri. Zungeri is the newest. The capacity is about 707 feet. It may be a year or 2 years old. Kainji is the oldest, commissioned in 1968. Now, the source of all these hydroelectricity power plants is the River Niger. The River Niger starts from the foot of General Mountain, not in Nigeria. So it traverses a number of countries, including Togo, including the Benin Republic, including the Niger Republic, and then comes to Nigeria, big in Niger Delta, big in Niger State, and continues. Now, we have a lot of dams in Nigeria. So the River Niger gives us not only is it a source of power, but also a source of agri. We have a lot of irrigation projects that depend on the River Niger. There is a danger that any of these countries through which the River Niger traverses and comes to them can dam it. If the Niger gets dammed, there will be serious consequences for that. So to prevent such a thing, we say, please don't build anything on the River Niger. It's smaller in your own countries, but here not be. Please, we give you power. We supply you power at a concessionary rate. So it's a win-win. So it's not a question of being Father Christmas. No. It's in our own strategic interest. It's in our own enlightened interest. At the same time, we help these neighboring countries that may not be as wealthy as we are. So it's good to understand the reason why we supply them power. There'll be pain, and there may be some management challenges. I do not know the reason why they're not on. But I think there'll be pain. They have not been so delicate. I don't think we should lose sleep because I've not paid it. They didn't pay the last quarter. There'll be pain. Even the last quarter, they paid. But as I've said, for previous commitments, for previous.
So, what does all this mean for the ordinary businesses and households still on the grid? On prices, his message was measured. Tariffs may hold for now, but pressure is building. And on supply, his honesty was striking. Asked whether he expects drastic change soon, his answer was, I'm afraid not.
Start with the prices. The tariff may not increase now. It will increase in the future due to a lot of factors, not just one factor. Only may I, if people are leaving grid supply on its own is unfactured, there are also newcomers. There are new industries coming up. They may not be coming up at the rate you and I want. So they will get new customers. But the danger is that if the customers continue to experience the same problems that led to the exits of even a service company, not a manufacturing company, like not a manufacturing organization, like FIRS, then that is a big problem. It will result in a lot of things, high cost of doing business in Nigeria, high cost of production, and therefore high cost of services and products, goods and services. And nobody wants that. So it's not a good omen at all. But we hope that the government will find an answer to the fundamental problems that's in the process. If you ask me, am I realistically expecting a drastic change in the foreseeable future? My honest answer is, I'm afraid not. The major problem is not being tackled. What we are seeing here, poor generation, poor transmission, poor distribution, untimely payments, all of them can be attributed to one thing: poor leadership of the class. Nigerians have not been paying attention as they should to the quality of people driving the car sector. There is a fundamental problem in that. And we fear solving that problem. I'm afraid we may not go far. There is a very common saying. I think everybody in this world believes that this saying is valid. Organizations grow and fall on the quality of their leaders. What is the leadership of the organizations that drive the Nigerian power sector? Are you impressed? My answer is, I'm afraid the leadership is not. And the appropriate authorities are not doing enough to inspire the confidence of the Nigerian consumers.
This brings us to where, in his view, the whole problem began. The privatization of 2013, he says, was a farce. Assets handed to buyers without experience, finance, or the foreign partners they claimed. And the federal government never truly left. It still owns 40% of the distribution companies, a sleeping partner, contributing nothing but on every board. Until that unfinished privatization is completed properly, he argues, the sector cannot be fixed. We leave you with his final word.
Government still owes 40%. The private sector has 60%. And the government is a sleeping partner. The government is unable to contribute equity, cash. So it's represented on the boards of 11 discos that were carved out of PHCN that was originally NEPA. What do they contribute? What value they add? Most people think they're not adding anything. Most people feel that the 40% should be privatized, and this time to ensure that the iniquities that characterized the privatization of 2013 is not repeated. The privatization of 2013 was a farce. Governments, top government officers, and their agents honored the assets themselves. Privatization in 2013 did not follow due process, and that's a major problem of what we're having today. There was brazen government intervention, very brazen, and extremely incompetent people with no experience, with no financial resources, no technical resources, acquired these facilities. Consequently, we're in this mess. And of course, the government itself has not been very serious. What the government should do, it is not done. For example, the government say that it will not interfere in determining the tariff structure. Then it dispels. So dispels fix. Is that the situation today? The answer is no. They're not allowed to fix the structure determined by market forces. It's not happening. And there are a lot of people, many of these companies in 2012, 2013, claim to have foreign international partners. After privatization, we discovered it was a risk. None of them has any international partner. Have they been punished? The answer is no. They have failed in a lot of ways. Have they been punished by the government and its appropriate agencies? The answer is no. So what we have a situation in the power sector where you do as you wish and there are no consequences. Management and leadership scholars call it laissez-faire leadership style. Do as you wish, no consequence.
That was C. Don Adinuba on the power grid losing its biggest customers and the unfinished reform at the root of it. It's time now for another break. When we return, we look at a recent milestone in oil production in Nigeria. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now to a milestone on oil production. Nigeria pumped an average of 1.56 million barrels of crude a day in June, according to the upstream regulator. That's the highest strict crude output since April 2020 and puts Nigeria above its production quota for a second month running. More barrels means more dollars, and those dollars are part of the reserve buffer, now holding up the naira. Now to the central bank's external position. Governor Olayemi Cardoso says the bank is targeting $1 billion in monthly diaspora remittances by the end of the year, up from more than $600 million a month currently. Speaking at the Business Day CEO Forum in Lagos, he said gross external reserves have risen 63% to nearly $52 billion, the highest level in more than 17 years. This means that stronger inflows will deepen dollar liquidity and support the naira as Nigeria works to diversify its foreign exchange earnings beyond oil. His comments come ahead of Monday's Monetary Policy Committee meeting, with headline inflation broadly unchanged at 15.91% in June, and many analysts speculating the benchmark rate to hold at 26.5%. That same forum produced a bold projection from the finance minister. Taiwo Oyedele says expanding Nigeria's credit economy alone could add more than $100 billion in economic value as the government pursues a $1 trillion economy by 2030. He told small business leaders that around 10,000 informal businesses are now applying to register every day, and that small businesses have been exempted from corporate income tax under the new reforms. However, the message to investors was direct. Capital responds to stable policy and strong institutions, not rhetoric. For Nigeria, the test now is converting hard-won stability into investments, jobs, and real economic incomes. It's time now for our third break. When we return, we look at two major developments in education and the agriculture sector in Nigeria in collaboration with the World Bank. Welcome back. Before we return to the World Bank, let's turn to energy production. Nigerian fuel importers are facing tighter margins as rising international petrol prices and higher freight costs collide with Dangote's refinery pricing. A new S&P Global report says freight rates from Europe to West Africa has jumped to just over $37 per metric ton, up from under $30 at the end of June, while prices in the Lomé trading hub have risen above Dangote's sales price, effectively shutting the import window. For consumers, this is an upside. The refinery has kept domestic prices stable despite the global squeeze, cutting petrol by more than 200 naira per litre since May. Staying with energy now, a warning from industry leaders. Executives say Nigeria's flawed domestic gas pricing regime is keeping billions of dollars of investment on the sidelines, despite proven reserves of more than 215 trillion cubic feet. As the country generates barely 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts of energy for a population of over 220 million, producers say regulated prices and payment uncertainty push them towards export markets instead. Their call: let willing buyers and willing sellers set the price and secure payments across the power chain. In Abuja, a major spending announcement. President Bola Tinubu has unveiled 5 development programs worth around $3.05 billion, financed largely by the World Bank, targeting poverty, healthcare, and education. The education component alone is worth $552 million and will reach about 29 million children, 500,000 teachers, and 65,000 public schools. It follows this week's launch of a $500 million agriculture fund for the Niger Delta, aimed at raising food output and attracting private capital. With food inflation still above 17%, the government is betting that social investment can turn farm gains into relief for households. This food pressure is echoed on the global stage as the World Bank has warned that the world food supplies, while adequate for now, remain fragile. In its latest food security update, the bank says fertilizer prices jumped 35% in the first 5 months of the year, with a high probability of an El Niño weather cycle emerging by mid-next year. For Nigeria, where food is already the biggest driver of inflation, expensive fertilizer this planting season means relief on food prices is unlikely to come soon. One more break, then we'll look at the great developments in cocoa production in Nigeria. Welcome back. There's better news for one crop. The Bank of Industry has unveiled an €85 million loan facility to expand cocoa processing in Nigeria, backed by the European Development Bank. The bank says processed cocoa can earn up to $30,000 a ton, against around $9,000 for raw beans. Yet, more than 80% of Nigeria's cocoa still leaves the country unprocessed. The facility includes dedicated windows for small farmers and cooperatives, a push to capture more value at home. Now a read on how businesses are feeling. The central bank's latest survey shows the Business Confidence Index slipped to 7.2 points in June from 7.9 in May, with rising operating costs and energy shortages weighing on sentiment. Mining was the most optimistic sector, services barely positive, and despite expecting stronger activity ahead, Firms say they are not planning to hire. The employment outlook is still negative. Businesses remain hopeful about the second half of the year, but for now, hope is not translating into jobs. And finally, to the corporate results desk. BUA Foods has announced a major expansion, doubling wheat-based production capacity, entering the noodles market and completing its edible oil operations after shareholders approved a record 504 billion naira dividend. The company reported revenue of 1.77 trillion naira for 2025, with profit after tax up 95%. Chairman Abdulsamad Rabiu says the goal is scale, building an indigenous food giant able to compete at the highest level and strengthen the nation's food security. That's it for Business Buzz today. I'm Zino Iroro. Thank you for watching.